I read that the insect kingdom is collapsing, that the dense eastern woods have been beaten back and defeated. The lawns, endless seas of lawn, are sprayed and pressed into obedience, all real, buzzing, bursting, impertinent life stilled into a stretch of green carpet. The bulldozers clear the trees and fill in the ponds, and the frogs fall silent. Lights along the highway, lights in backyards, lights everywhere, blind nighttime scavengers, confuse migrating birds. The moths seek the moon and exhaust themselves at street lamps. Fireflies flicker out. I read that the living world is flickering out. And so I rise in the morning, I fill the bird bath with fresh water. I rise in the morning and take a slender shovel and make space for a handful of goldenrod. I let the milkweed grow and open and surprise me with her purple flowers, her glorious blossoms, when once I did not even know that milkweed eventually blooms if you let her. Yesterday, I watched a swallowtail butterfly dance on the bee balm. There is no way to describe it except as a dance of joy. I read that maybe the world will collapse. I rise in the morning, and like the leaf that curves at the edge from despair into song, I plant something, a handful of goldenrod. I do sing. This is how I save myself. This is how we save ourselves. We sing. We plant something. We love something. We rise in the morning and begin again. Let us worship together and sing together our opening hymn, number 21, For the Beauty of the Earth. Please stand and join as you are able.
Oh, Good morning. Welcome to First Parish in Milton. My name is Steve Yakutis, and I'm a member of our worship committee. I'm so happy to welcome back Guest Minister Mary Margaret Earle, who will be leading this morning's service. If you're having trouble hearing us, please raise your hand here in the meeting house or message us in the chat function on Zoom so that we can adjust the sound. Reverend Mary Margaret Earle has served as Executive Director and Senior Minister of the Unitarian Universalist Urban Ministry for 10 years. In this ministry, she works for racial justice and to strengthen connections between Unitarian Universalists and the Roxbury neighborhood where urban ministry operates. Prior to her arrival at the UU Urban Ministry, she spent 10 years at a faith-based nonprofit in Rhode Island, serving the homeless community. She's a recipient of the Heroes of Faith Award from Rhode Island State College Council of Churches for her interfaith work, and she received a Courage of Conscience Award from the Peace Abbey in Sherborn, Mass. We are so glad that you have chosen to be here with us this morning or to join us virtually. However your journey, whoever you love, and whatever your heritage, you are welcome here. Your presence here on Sunday morning enriches worship for everyone. This sanctuary is made holy by your presence. If you're joining us for the first time, a special welcome. You'll find information about First Parish in your pew. One of the greeters or I would be happy to answer any questions you might have, and any of us would welcome the opportunity to walk with you to social hour after the service. The work of living our faith is done both in and out of worship, so I call your attention to the printed announcements that came with your order of worship or found in your email link. I'm going to mention a few items and also ask Jeff Stute to make a few words. One item that was not in the link, the bridging dinners with the Church of the Holy Spirit have returned. On November 1st, between 5 and 7, there will be the next one. Mark your calendar. The cost is $20 per adult, and food will be catered from Fresh Food Generation in Dorchester. Free childcare is available. Please let Sherry in the office know if you plan to attend. Also, in terms of food, because we know that's one of the things that brings us together, we're announcing the Harvest Supper, November 9th, 6 to 9:30 p.m. It will be a potluck on Saturday, November 9th. Click in the link, there's an RSVP, and sign up to bring your favorite dish. It's a much beloved tradition, and we hope to see you there. Jeff.
Good morning, everyone. I wanted everyone to know that the 10th anniversary celebration for the Milton Community Concerts was a rousing success last night. Everything went great. Tim started with the night with a budget of $200, but I'm sure he is well over that. The show was amazing. I would like to thank all the people who helped put on the show, like those people who provided the dinner between 5 and 6 and worked it. My wife Lisa, Mark and Patricia, Deb and Doug, Tucker, Trish, Bibi, thank you so much. I'd also like to thank the singers that are here, Dayon, Grace, and Karina. And also, it's a community concert, so we got donations from the community. From William James Gift in Lower Mills, Still and Rye, Montilio's in the Fruit Center, and of course, WBUR. So thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Now, let's take a few minutes to greet one another and extend a warm welcome to old friends and new. For those on Zoom, please turn on your video and go to the gallery view so we can say hello.
Good morning.
Hi, Jim.
How are you doing, Harold?
Fine, thanks.
Good morning.
Good.
Loud bunch there, down there on the floor. Hi, everybody else.
Good morning.
Good to see you. The concert was pretty amazing last night. I didn't see much of it, and the dinner was fantastic. Many hands. We do food well.
We do.
And I'm sorry I'm not there, or we're not there in person to hear Mary Margaret Earl. She is absolutely amazing, and what the UU Urban Ministry has done at First Parish Roxbury is just incredible. So
Where are you, Tucker?
we're in Milton. We're
And
in
now,
Yeah.
as we enter
I guess
into
we have to be
worship,
quiet.
please take a moment to make sure your cell phones are silenced. Now is the moment when we can focus on being here, when we can choose to connect with ourselves and the divine, when we can choose to just be present. Each Sunday, we light the chalice as a reminder that even in an unpredictable world, the flame continues to shine. A corner of warmth and awareness where we, the members of this faith community, can find comfort, support, and connection to one another. Please join us in saying the call to worship, which is text number 1 on the laminated card in your pew. Come, let us gather. We gather to celebrate the sacred within and among us. We come to seek spiritual growth and understanding. We strive to practice acceptance, forgiveness, and love. Together, we work to build a world with justice and compassion. Come, let us gather together. And now is the time for the story for all ages. It was brought to my attention that R.E. has been reading this book, Room on the Broom, and that we are going to be telling this story together with help from any of the friends in R.E. who would like to come up and assist. We're going to do a slightly abbreviated version. As I looked through the book, I thought if I were going to dress up for Halloween, I might go as L.J. Pig. Because this book has a lot of L.J. Pig in it. In particular, I want you to listen for equity and interdependence in this story. And I may be calling on some choir members to add some people up here. Would one of you want to be the witch? We could have a couple of witches. Okay, here we go. This is a besom, but it is a broom. Yes. Here, let's have the witches grab onto the broom. Hang on to it. It's right there. The witch had a cat, and a hat that was black, and long ginger hair in a braid down her back. How the cat purred, and how the witch grinned as they sat on their broomstick and flew through the wind. But how the witch wailed, and how the cat spat, when the wind blew so wildly, it blew off the hat. Yes, I know. So the witch flew down to the ground to look for the hat, and there was no hat. But out from the bushes came a dog. Right out here. And the dog had the hat. And the dog said, "Is there room on your broom for someone like me? And let's all say that. Is there room on your broom for someone like me? And the witch said sure, because she got her hat back. So you can join, if you can find a place to grab on. And off they flew. Off they flew, and then the wind tore the bow out of the witch's braid. She flew to the ground to look around, and where was the bow? Well, a bird flew by. Bird flew by and had the bow. And the bird gave the bow to the witch, and the bird said, "Is there room on the broom for someone like me?" Well, yes, there was. So away they flew. The next thing you knew, the witch's wand fell out of her hand, wand into pond. She landed on the ground and looked around. No wand, but there was a frog. And the frog said, "I have your wand. Is there room on the broom for someone like me?" And the witch said yes, so the frog got on. And there. It's kind of a heavily loaded broom, isn't it? Well, they're flying along, and something happens to the broom. It breaks. And they all fall into a bog, except for the witch. The next thing that happens is a giant dragon says, "What I like best is a French fried witch." And the dragon was about to eat the witch, but out of the bog came a creature with 4 heads, 2 wings, 8 feet, and it purred and it barked and it tweeted and it glumphed. And it rose up and it said, "Buzz off, that's my witch."
Buzz off, that's my witch.
And the dragon was so frightened it flew away, and the witch magically made a new broom with room for everyone.
And it even had seeds.
That's right, that's right. And now we'll sing the children off to R.E. And now we'll have our time of stillness. Today's reading is excerpts from The Sum of Us, What Racism Costs Everyone, and How We Can Prosper Together by Heather McGee. The American landscape was once graced with resplendent swimming pools, some big enough to hold thousands of swimmers at a time. In the 1920s, towns and cities tried to outdo one another by building the most elaborate pools. In the 1930s, the Works Progress Administration put people to work, building hundreds more. By World War II, the country's 2,000 pools were glittering symbols of a new commitment by local officials to the quality of life for their residents, allowing tens of thousands of people to socialize together for free. By the 1950s, the fight to integrate America's prized public swimming pools would demonstrate the limits of white commitment to public goods. In Montgomery, Alabama, the Oak Park Pool was the grandest one for miles, the crown jewels of the park department that also included a zoo, a community center, and a dozen other public parks. Dorothy Moore was a white teenage lifeguard when a federal court deemed the town's segregated recreation unconstitutional. Suddenly, black children would be able to wade into the deep end with white children at the Oak Park Pool. At the rec center, black elders would get chairs at the card tables. The reaction of the city council was swift. Effective January 1st, 1959, the Parks Department would be no more. The council decided to drain the pool rather than share it with their black neighbors. Of course, the decision meant that white families lost a public resource as well. It was miserable, Mrs. Moore told a reporter 5 decades later. Uncomprehending white children cried as the city contractors poured dirt in the pool, paved it over, and seeded it with grass that was green by the time summer came along again. To defy desegregation, Montgomery would go on to close every single public park and padlock the doors of the community center. It even sold off the animals in the zoo. The entire public park system would stay closed for over a decade. Even after it reopened, they never rebuilt the pool. Today, we don't even notice the absence of the grand pools in our communities. Where grass grows over former sites, there are no plaques to tell the story of how racism drained the pool. But the spirit that drained these public goods live on. The impulse now manifests in a subtler fashion, more often in a pool of public resources than a literal one.
Good morning. It is lovely to be back in Milton, and I want to thank my very dear colleague, the Reverend Lisa Ward, for inviting me to be with you this morning. I also want to thank Steve for being worship associate and helping out so much this morning. Thank you. And I also want to thank Mary Blanchette for tabling in social hour to share some materials and information about the work of the Unitarian Universalist Urban Ministry, should you be interested in learning more after today's service. Mary, along with Dottie Pitt, are delegates to the urban ministry from Milton, and that means their work is to try to connect us through communications and information. And Milton is one of 45 member congregations of the urban ministry that are connected around Greater Boston to the work that we do in Roxbury. And the urban ministry was founded about 200 years ago by a Unitarian minister who was working for social justice in Boston, and he wanted to combine the power of Unitarian congregations to do that work. And today, congregations like Milton still play an important role in our work to dismantle racism and to advance racial, social, and economic justice. You have been a part of our work through time, and importantly, as some of you may remember, Milton was a founding congregation in launching a program a few years ago called Jericho Road Roxbury. Who still remembers the name Jericho Road Roxbury? Yeah, cool. It ended a few years ago, but it very much, the spirit of that program lives on in the work of the urban ministry, and today it lives on in a new program that we're nurturing called Circles of Support, which is about connecting pro bono talents to surround nonprofits and businesses in Roxbury. So please know that that legacy continues. This morning I wanted to just take a moment to thank some of the supporters of the work of the urban ministry, Elise Henriks and Tony Dutzeg. I hope I'm pronouncing that name right. Okay, thank you. Scott McIsaac and Suzanne Durrell, Carolyn Newman and Rick Malmstrom, B.B. Williamson, Nancy Wilbur, Dale Golombeski and Amy Cavadlo. Some of you have been donating for 10 years or more, so I just want to thank you very much for your support. My heart is always full when I have a chance to come out to congregations and think about how friends have supported and made our work possible. And my heart is especially full this year because I'm reflecting and celebrating 10 years at the urban ministry this fall. And this summer, I took a trip that gave me space for reflecting on my time at the urban ministry. I hiked in the Canadian Rockies, and I looked back on what I've learned in this work as I was climbing up steep elevation, adjusting my awkward backpack, taking in a stunning view of glaciers and azure blue water. It was not easy going up, and I actually bruised toes coming down, but it was a wonderful trip. And as I went, I thought of how it is like the work that we do together for justice, bit by bit, sometimes hard and uncomfortable, and with so many gifts along the way. I looked back at arriving in Roxbury in November of 2014, when right away I saw that the work was more than our programs, that there was this core question beneath them, which was, how would we address racism in Greater Boston? We were an historically white-led organization in the heart of Boston's historic African-American community. We were encircled by suburban, mostly white congregations that were reaching out to us to figure out how to be part of making change. I was gripped by the challenge and the potential and how much I had to learn to get my arms around that. But before I could do that, I was called on to preach in pulpits like this one, and I brought no expertise in my first preaching season, no profound message. I brought my questions. What did it mean to be a white-led organization in Roxbury? How did we forge real relationships across difference? And how did we make change that really mattered? And I began the work simply, listening, learning, and following. Over these past 10 years, the police officers who killed Michael Brown were not indicted, sparking the Black Lives Matter movement. We witnessed the election of 2016 and the killing of George Floyd. White people were shaken out of a collective slumber. We learned that the waters of racism in the United States go deep, and the more that I looked, the deeper the waters went. I first learned about health, wealth, and educational disparities that mean that Black people live poorer and die sooner than white people. There is a 23-year difference in life expectancy in Roxbury and Whiteback Bay, just 1 mile away. And the waters went deeper still. I learned about the racism that was baked into the systems that caused those statistics, the prison, healthcare, and food systems. African Americans are incarcerated at 5 times the rate of white people. Only half of African Americans have private health insurance versus 75% of white people. And 22% of Black people in the United States experience food insecurity, twice the rate of white people. And the waters went deeper and colder still. I learned how these systems are rooted in enslavement, how the police system grew out of slave patrols, how founding fathers like Thomas Jefferson were themselves enslavers whose economic well-being was secured through bondage, how after the Civil War, the prison system replaced enslavement as Blacks were charged with petty crimes and sentenced to hard labor, sometimes in the very same fields where plantations once stood. I learned that we cannot disentangle modern educational, housing, and economic systems from that history. Racism isn't a fistful of solvable problems, it's foundational. And to move forward in any meaningful way on our nation's and our region's social ailments, we must face that together. I packed a book on my trip to the Rockies. It was the book from which we heard earlier, The Sum of Us, by researcher Heather McGee. She began her research after the 2016 election, when many of us were asking, why didn't people vote in their own self-interest? Who remembers asking that question, right? Why didn't people vote in their own self-interest? She looked at the racism that showed itself after the election and in our nation's political turmoil. Her thesis is this: our country's ongoing struggle for meaningful healthcare reform, positive economic change, even investment in infrastructure like our roadways, our struggle to achieve collective good despite our abundant wealth and resources can be traced to enslavement. White people, McGee writes, have been conditioned to believe in a zero-sum equation that if people of color gain, they lose. And the stronger a person's racial resentment, the likelier to reject policies and investments that benefit all of us, including themselves. McGee asserts that etched deeply into the white psyche is a value placed on whiteness. And when whites see Black people in the swimming pool, they'd rather not have a pool than to be in it with them and erase the status that is conferred by their whiteness. And it is this deep-seated disfigurement of the white psyche that billionaire titans and political tacticians lean into with racist dog whistles to keep us separated and to maintain their power and control. It especially harms people of color, and that cannot be overstated. But it doesn't serve any of us except for a very few at the top. She writes, quote, "Racism works against non-wealthy white Americans. It lowers their support for government action that could help them economically out of a zero-sum fear that it could help the racialized undeserving as well," end quote. She draws a through line showing how this zero-sum thinking has collapsed unions that could advocate for all workers, powered disinvestment of public services like higher education. When more students of color began attending college, she writes, public funding for it dried up. College students of color 40 years ago were just 1 in 6. Today, they're nearing half, and parallel to that rise in BIPOC students came cuts to per-student funding. In the past 30 years, public college tuition has almost tripled. She posits that it's why states like Texas refuse Medicare expansion, refusing what's basically free federal funds that would mean all rural Texans, white and blacks, would have better access to hospitals. The refusal is fear that expanding public health care would draw and serve more people of color. Black people suffer the most from racism, but our whole human family is harmed by it. Solidarity, she says, is the answer. Solidarity is the answer. She quotes a longtime activist, quote, "If we didn't have these sharp divisions based on race, we could make enormous progress in terms of making sure that people are not hurting as badly as they are or deprived of the necessities of life," end quote. And she continues, "Over the years, I have sought answers to why a fair economy is elusive. It has become clear that how white people understand what's right and wrong about our diverse nation, who belongs and who deserves, is determining our collective course. That is the crux of it. Can we swim together in the same pool or not?" She says it's a political question, yes, and one with economic ramifications, but at its core, it's a moral question, end quote. And it's a question for us as people of faith. I no longer believe that we can advance justice in the United States in a meaningful way without dealing with our history of enslavement and its inherited racism, not in fighting climate change or fighting hunger. Racism cannot be separated from the rest of our social justice commitments because it's part and parcel of it. And that means that we must build connection and solidarity across race in Greater Boston. In our segregated world, that work can seem daunting. But as people of faith, let us not be daunted. We are simply called to begin. We are called to do what we can in as many ways as we can for as long as we can. After 10 years at the urban ministry, I bring to this pulpit no more expertise than when I began the work. But what I have is conviction that building relationships across race is foundational for all justice work. And I come with really the same strategies as the year I arrived. To build real connections, those of us who are white need to listen and learn and follow. At the urban ministry, we listen to the community to guide us forward. In partnership with the Roxbury Historical Society, we began research into the history of enslavement by the congregation of First Church Roxbury, whose church and campus we inherited and inhabit. We published a report citing the names of 58 enslaved persons owned by First Church Roxbury congregants, with even the first minister an enslaver. We asked Roxbury community members to guide us forward from there. And over the past year, neighbors have charted our course, seeking to learn more about the lives of those named in the report, hoping to track their genealogy to find descendants living in Roxbury today. It might seem that the urgency would be confronting the racial injustice that's happening right now, and yes, that is important. But the Black community says this also matters: historic truth-telling, making the past visible, and deeply honoring the lives of those who were so dishonored by our religious ancestors. This matters urgently too. And we learn. Over the past 5 years, we've held a series of lectures called Community Conversations, in which we invite in BIPOC leaders to speak to the challenges that are facing the Black community today in Boston. They've spoken on gentrification and displacement, educational inequity, the racial wealth gap, poor health outcomes. We learned for an ever-deepening understanding of past and present. We've built a tours program that is led by community members who are highlighting the history of the community that we stand in. And young people in our after-school program design their own tours of their own neighborhood, highlighting what matters most to them. And they share these tours with visiting Unitarian Universalist youth from around the country. Young people share their history and their hope with other young people. And we follow. Our work in partnership has deepened through time. When the NAACP asked us to fill a bus to go to an action in Washington, D.C., Unitarian Universalists filled the bus and went to Washington, D.C. As the Louis D. Brown Peace Institute addresses violence in the city, we stand behind them, inviting congregations to join the Mother's Day Walk for Peace. When City Life Vida Urbana asks us to stuff envelopes, we stuff envelopes. We build solidarity by showing up again and again in a spirit of listening and learning. And in these encounters, we are blessed by the ripening fruits of relationship. These are the gifts on our necessary journey for justice. When you enter the doors of the UU Urban Ministry, you will see on the entry walls a quote by Aboriginal activist Lila Watson. It says this: "If you are here to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you have come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together." These words resonate as a spiritual truth. But there's a very concrete truth here too, that the sum of us reminds us. The truth is that until we grapple with a history of enslavement and racism and bridge our divide and commit to working in solidarity, we will not be free, any of us, from all that ails us. We need to work together. On my last hike in the Canadian Rockies, we climbed up Larch Valley to Sentinel Pass, steadily making a 2,500 feet elevation gain to a stunning view, and then we began our descent. And as we descended, we came upon startled hikers warning that a grizzly bear was along the trail. She was in a state of what is called hyperphagia, a trance-like focus on eating enough calories for winter. Our hike leaders reminded us that what is called for when faced with grave danger is this: Make noise, people, and stick together. And so we held close and began singing until we were safely through and the trail ended. That's what gets us through the hard and dangerous time ahead, friends. Let us sing loudly, reach out to the whole human family, and stick together. And may it be so. And amen. I invite you to stand and join with me in our next hymn, number 323, Break Not the Circle. Please be seated. I invite us into a time of prayer. I invite us to breathe in and exhale. Settle into the pews and our chairs. And be present, knowing that we don't need to be anywhere else right now, but just where we are. Holy Presence, we come to you on a brilliant fall day when we see so much beauty around us, and also on a morning when this time is fraught and tense for many of us. We come worried about the state of the world and conflict and violence. And we come to you worried about the state of our country and conflict and division. And we come to you with our own personal struggles in our families, in our workplace, and all of this we lift up on a moment that is full of so much. In these days ahead, may we stop and breathe. May we, in these days ahead, remind ourselves to stay grounded. May we, in these days ahead, do what we can do, and the rest lift up and let go. May we be peace in the midst. We enter together a moment of quiet. Amen.
Today's offering will be given to the Unitarian Universalist Urban Ministry. As many of you know, twice a month our offering is given to an organization whose work this congregation supports. This effort is spearheaded by our Social and Environmental Justice Committee and is one of the ways we fulfill our mission of helping to build a just and healthy world. There will be more information at a table at Social Hour with Mary Blanchett. To give, please follow the instructions printed on the laminated card in your pew or shown on the Zoom screen. For those in the meeting house, you may also deposit cash or check into the collection plates located by either door. Please support the UU Urban Ministry by giving as generously as you can. Please stand as you are able and join me in the unison dedication, which is text number 4 on the laminated card. We'll follow that with the doxology. May these gifts be transformed into strength for this faith community, into comfort, food, and shelter for those in need, and may we be transformed by generosity.
Our words again from the activist Lila Watson. If you have come here to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you have come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together, and may it be so, and amen.